The truth is a heavy burden, a weight that settles in your gut and tightens in your chest. It's the kind of truth that can unravel a family, sever bonds built over a lifetime, and leave a trail of broken trust in its wake. This is the story of how my family was fractured by a lie, a betrayal so profound it felt like a physical blow. My uncle, Garrett, had always been the heart of our family gatherings. He was the one who could tell a story that would have everyone in stitches, the guy who remembered every milestone and made a point to celebrate it with you. At 52, he was a bit down on his luck, divorced and struggling with finances. But we loved him all the same. So when he called our family 6 months ago, with a trembling voice and the news that he had been diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer and had only a few months to live, our world fell apart. The devastation was immediate. My mother and her sisters were on the phone for hours, their voices choked with tears as they tried to figure out how to help. My 87-year-old grandmother, living on a modest pension, immediately offered to dip into her life savings to help with his medical bills. The family group chat, normally a place for shared jokes and photos, became a flurry of heartfelt messages and offers of support. 2 days later, Garrett launched a crowdfunding campaign online. The goal was $50,000 to cover what he called experimental treatments, travel to specialists, and basic living expenses now that he was too ill to work. The story he wrote was gut-wrenching, describing his fear, his pain, and his determination to fight for every last moment with us. The response was overwhelming. My parents gave $2,000, money they'd been saving for a trip. My Aunt Patricia, who works 3 jobs to support her disabled son, contributed $500. Even my teenage cousins gave money from their part-time jobs. Within a month, the campaign had raised over $30,000 from our extended family, friends, and old colleagues. I chipped in $1,000 myself, sacrificing the money I was saving for a new car. How could a car matter when my uncle was dying? We all made sacrifices. My sister even postponed her wedding to help with the fund. Garrett kept us all updated through frequent social media posts and family calls. He shared photos of himself looking thin and weary, recounting grueling chemotherapy sessions and countless doctor appointments. He spoke of his gratitude for our support, a gratitude we were all so willing to give. We rallied around him in a way I had never seen before. People who hadn't spoken in years were brought together by a shared desire to help him. My cousin Miranda, who lived near him, started bringing him groceries and cleaning his apartment. A meal train was organized, and rides were offered to appointments. The love we poured into him felt boundless. The first cracks. But somewhere around the 3rd month, small details started to nag at me. I work in healthcare administration, and some of his updates just didn't align with what I knew. He mentioned getting chemo at a clinic I was certain was a cardiac center, not an oncology unit. When I asked him about his oncologist's name on a family call, he gave a vague answer and quickly changed the subject. Then there was the strange fact that, despite supposedly undergoing intensive chemotherapy, his hair never thinned. In his photos, he looked tired and had lost weight, but his thick brown hair was always perfectly intact. When my cousin mentioned this to my mom, she defended him, saying not all treatments cause hair loss. I tried to push my suspicions aside. Why would I doubt a dying man? The true breaking point came when I was helping my grandmother with her computer. She was showing me some family photos, and a screenshot of Garrett's GoFundMe page appeared on her screen. As I looked at the page, a wave of cold dread washed over me. One of the photos he had posted, which he claimed was a picture of him receiving treatment, was a stock photo. I recognized it immediately from a medical website I had seen. The man in the picture was not Garrett. My hands trembled as I did a reverse image search on my phone. The results were sickeningly clear. The photo was a generic stock image, appearing on multiple websites about cancer treatments. It wasn't him at all. The truth, once a vague suspicion, now felt like a punch to the gut. For the next week, I conducted my own quiet investigation. I called the clinic he claimed to be getting treatment at, pretending to be a family member verifying insurance. They had no record of a patient with his name. I checked with the hospital he mentioned for his initial diagnosis. No record. I even drove to his apartment complex and spoke to his neighbors. They told me he had been working odd jobs and was certainly not bedridden. One neighbor even said she had seen him loading construction equipment into a truck just the week before. The evidence was irrefutable, yet I still couldn't fathom it. This was my uncle, the man who had taught me to ride a bike and always brought me comic books. How could he lie about something so monstrous? The revelation. My mind raced. Part of me wanted to confront him privately, to give him a chance to come clean and return the money. But then I thought about my grandmother, on the verge of spending her entire life savings. I thought about my sister postponing her wedding and my aunt working extra shifts. He hadn't just deceived us. He had stolen our sacrifices. The annual family reunion was just 2 weeks away. Garrett had said he might not be well enough to attend, but everyone was hoping he would make it. It was then that I made a decision that I knew would change our family forever. I gathered all my evidence, the stock photos, the phone records, screenshots of his inconsistent timeline, and even a photo I had taken of him loading construction equipment. At the reunion, about 40 family members were gathered in my aunt's backyard. Garrett arrived, looking appropriately frail and walking slowly with a cane. Everyone fussed over him, bringing him food and getting him a comfortable chair. He was the center of attention, soaking up the sympathy. After dinner, my Aunt Patricia stood up, her eyes brimming with tears. She had a check in her hand, the culmination of an additional $5,000 the family had collected since the crowdfunding campaign closed. She spoke of his courage, of how we were all fighting this battle with him. That's when I stood up. "Before you give him that check," I said, my voice shaking with a mix of fear and resolve, "I think everyone needs to know the truth about Garrett's cancer." The backyard fell into a stunned silence. Garrett's face went pale. He stared at me with an expression of pure, unadulterated fear. I pulled out my phone and began. I showed them the stock photos, the records from the clinics he claimed to have visited that showed no record of him, and I explained how he had been seen doing construction work when he should have been undergoing intensive treatments. The silence that followed was suffocating. Then my grandmother, the family matriarch, rose slowly from her chair. She looked Garrett directly in the eye and asked in a barely audible whisper, "Is this true?" Garrett tried to deny it, to claim I was jealous or that there was a mistake. But as I methodically laid out more and more proof, his flimsy story completely unraveled. Finally, he broke down, not with remorse, but with rage. He screamed that yes, it was all fake, but he had needed the money. He had faced eviction and was drowning in debt. He claimed no one ever helped him before, so he had to find a way to get our attention and our support. The explosion of outrage from my family was deafening. My Aunt Patricia had to be held back by her husband. My grandmother sat down heavily, looking as though she had aged a decade in a matter of moments. Garrett left that night and hasn't spoken to any of us since. We later discovered he had spent most of the money on gambling debts and was living in a much nicer apartment than any of us knew, all thanks to our donations. The aftermath has been a living nightmare. Some family members blame me for exposing him publicly, saying I should have handled it privately. Others are grateful that I uncovered the truth before my grandmother lost her entire life savings. The trust that held our family together has been shattered. We've been in contact with law enforcement about filing fraud charges, but the money is likely gone for good. My grandmother has been the most affected. She often says she doesn't know if she can ever trust anyone again. It's a painful wound that may never fully heal. Looking back, I don't regret uncovering the truth. But I do wonder if there was a way to do it that would have caused less devastation. The family reunion was supposed to be a celebration, and instead, it became the day we learned that the person we all loved and trusted the most had been manipulating our deepest fears and emotions for money. The truth, no matter how painful, is always worth uncovering. But sometimes, the cost of that truth can be a price you weren't prepared to pay.